"Get on your knees," the man said, his voice low and certain, like the night already belonged to him. And for a moment, the ranch held its breath, the wind dragging slow across 50 acres of dry Texas land, pushing dust against the wooden porch where Ava Brooks stood without moving, her boots planted firm against the worn boards, her hands empty at her sides, her eyes calm in a way that didn't match the tension pressing into the air around her. The front door hung open behind them, glass scattered across the floor catching faint moonlight, and the men who had forced their way inside now spread out with careless confidence, boots tracking dirt across polished wood, glancing at each other with smirks that came too easy, too practiced, like they had done this before and expected it to end the same way. Ava didn't speak right away, and that silence stretched longer than it should have, long enough for the leader to tilt his head, studying her, confused by the lack of panic, by the absence of pleading he clearly expected. She wasn't young, not fragile, not loud, just a black woman standing alone on a ranch most people forgot existed, miles from the nearest town, a place people passed without stopping, the kind of place you could disappear into if you wanted to be left alone. And that was exactly why she had chosen it. Earlier that morning, she had been out by the fence line, checking a loose post, the sun just starting to rise over the hills, painting the land in soft gold, her horse grazing quietly nearby. The world simple, quiet, predictable. She liked it that way, the routine, the silence, the distance from everything she had left behind. No headlines, no uniforms, no voices calling orders through static-filled radios, just wind, wood, and the steady rhythm of her own breath. Now that rhythm hadn't changed, not even with strangers standing inside her home, not even with the tension coiling tighter by the second. The man stepped closer, boots creaking against the floor, expecting her to flinch, expecting her to shrink, but she didn't, her gaze meeting his for a brief second, steady, measuring, like she was seeing more than what stood in front of her. "You picked the wrong place," she said quietly, her voice even, not raised, not rushed, just placed into the air with a weight that didn't match her position. One of the men laughed under his breath, shaking his head, as if the words meant nothing, as if she didn't understand how this worked. But Ava already understood more than they realized, her eyes flicking once toward the dark edge of the room, mapping distance, space, angles without seeming to move at all, her body still, her breath controlled, as if the silence itself was something she could hold, shape. And when the wind pressed again against the broken doorway, carrying the faint scent of dust and metal through the house, something in that stillness shifted, subtle, almost invisible, but enough that the leader's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, like some instinct deep in him had started to whisper that this wasn't going the way it should. The man's smile returned, but it was thinner now, stretched across something less certain, and Ava saw it without reacting, her eyes drifting past him for just a fraction of a second toward the open doorway where the night pressed in like a living thing, the wind carrying the dry scent of earth across the threshold, brushing against her skin, grounding her, steadying her, reminding her exactly where she was and how far this place sat from everything else. No neighbors, no traffic, no interruptions, just distance measured in miles and silence that could stretch for hours, without a single sound breaking it. The kind of silence most people found uncomfortable, but she had learned to live inside, to read, to trust. Behind the leader, one of the men kicked aside a piece of broken glass, the sharp scrape echoing louder than it should have, and another wandered toward the kitchen, opening cabinets without permission, laughing softly as if this were already theirs. Ava let them move, let them believe it, her posture unchanged, her breathing slow and even, each inhale measured, each exhale controlled, the same rhythm she had carried for years, the same rhythm that had once been the only thing standing between chaos and clarity. "You alone out here?" the leader asked, his tone shifting, curiosity slipping in beneath the confidence. And Ava met his gaze again, not answering right away, not giving him what he wanted, just holding that silence until it pressed back on him. She could see it now, the small details most people missed, the way his shoulders were set too high, the way his eyes moved just a little too quickly between her and the room, the way his confidence leaned on the presence of the others instead of standing on its own. He was used to control, but not used to resistance that did not look like fear. "This land is mine," she said finally, her voice steady, grounded, carrying no edge of panic, only fact, and that seemed to irritate him more than anything else. Outside, a loose piece of metal on the barn roof tapped lightly in the wind, a soft, irregular sound that blended into the night. But Ava noticed it, logged it, the timing, the rhythm, the direction of the breeze, all of it settling into place without effort. Her mind did not rush, did not scatter. It organized, quietly, efficiently, mapping every corner of the space she stood in as if she had done it 1,000 times before, because in many ways, she had. The leader took another step closer, close enough now that the faint scent of leather and dust clung to the air between them. And still, Ava did not move, did not step back, did not break that invisible line she had drawn the moment they entered. One of the men behind him muttered something under his breath, a nervous chuckle that did not quite land, and Ava caught that too. The shift in tone, the first crack in their certainty, small but real. It was not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet unraveling beginning at the edges, the kind most people ignored until it was too late. The leader narrowed his eyes, studying her more carefully now, as if trying to solve something that did not make sense, and for the first time since they arrived. He did not speak right away, the silence settling again, heavier this time, pressing into the room like a question no one wanted to ask, and Ava stood in the center of it, still as the land itself, waiting, watching, as if she already knew exactly how the next moment would unfold. The silence did not break, it thickened, settling into the walls, into the floor, into the space between every breath, and Ava let it, because silence was never empty. It was information, it was pressure, it was the moment before people revealed who they really were, and she watched it happen now, right in front of her. The leader shifted his weight, just slightly, but enough that she saw it. The uncertainty pressing in from the edges, the way his confidence no longer sat as comfortably on his shoulders as it had when he first walked in, and behind him one of the men stopped moving altogether, his earlier laughter gone, replaced by something quieter, something that did not belong in a place where they expected control. Outside, the wind picked up again, stronger this time, pushing through the open doorway, brushing against the hanging curtain in the hallway, making it sway just enough to catch the corner of Ava's eye. And she noted it without turning her head, every small movement in the environment settling into her awareness like pieces of a map forming in real time. "You think you can just stand there and stare us down?" the leader said finally, but his voice lacked the sharp edge it carried before, and Ava heard that too. The difference between performance and truth, the gap widening with every second that passed. She did not answer immediately, not because she was unsure, but because timing mattered, because words, when used at the wrong moment, lost their weight, and she had never wasted anything she did not have to. Instead, she let her gaze move once across the room, slow and deliberate, not searching, but confirming, the distance between the doorway and the far wall, the position of each man, the way the light from outside cut across the floor in uneven lines, the way shadows gathered in the corners, all of it settling into place without effort. This was her home, her ground, and more than that, it was a space she understood completely, not just in shape, but in rhythm, in sound, in the way it breathed with the night. "You should leave," she said at last, her voice low, steady, carrying no threat, only certainty, and that made it land harder than anything louder could have. One of the men scoffed, but it was forced, the sound breaking awkwardly in the air, and another glanced toward the door, just for a second, as if something outside had suddenly become more real than what stood inside. The leader noticed it too, his jaw tightening, his authority slipping just enough that he had to pull it back into place. But the effort showed now, and Ava saw that clearly. She did not move, did not step forward, did not reach for anything, because she did not need to. Her presence alone shifting the balance in ways they did not understand, ways they could not see but were beginning to feel. Her breathing remained even, her shoulders relaxed, her eyes sharp, not wide with fear, but narrowed with focus, the kind that came from years of learning how to read a moment before it unfolded, how to stand inside tension without letting it control her. The wind pressed harder through the doorway, carrying a low, steady hum from somewhere out across the land, and Ava recognized it instantly. The sound of distance, of open space stretching far beyond the walls of this house. A reminder that out here, control did not belong to whoever walked in the loudest. It belonged to whoever understood the ground beneath their feet. And as the leader took another step closer, trying to reclaim something he could feel slipping away, Ava did not retreat, because she already knew this moment had shifted, and they just had not realized it yet. The air shifted again, but this time it did not come from the wind. It came from them, from the way their movements slowed, from the way their voices no longer overlapped so easily, from the quiet realization settling in piece by piece that something about this situation did not follow the script they were used to, and Ava stood in the center of it, unmoved, her presence steady like the land beneath the house, unshaken by the noise they had brought in with them. The leader let out a short breath through his nose, forcing a smirk back onto his face as if he could still control the direction of this moment. But the effort showed now, and Ava caught every detail, the slight tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers flexed once at his side, the way his eyes flicked toward the doorway before returning to her. "You really think we are just going to walk out because you asked?" he said, his tone sharper now, but thinner too, stretched over something he could not quite hide anymore. Ava did not respond right away, her gaze steady, her posture unchanged, her silence pressing back against his words instead of giving them space to grow. And that silence began to weigh on the others, pulling at the edges of their confidence, making them shift where they stood, glance at each other, search for cues that no longer came as easily as before. One of the men near the kitchen took a step back toward the main room, slower this time, less certain, his earlier casual movements replaced by something more cautious, and another adjusted his stance, turning slightly, as if to keep both Ava and the doorway in view. Small decisions made without thinking, driven by instincts they did not fully understand. Outside, the wind dropped suddenly, leaving behind a stillness so complete it felt almost unnatural, the kind that made every small sound inside the house stand out sharper, the creak of wood, the faint shift of boots against the floor, the soft rustle of fabric, and Ava heard it all, not as noise, but as information, as patterns forming and shifting in real time. Her eyes moved once more, slow and deliberate, not searching, but confirming, measuring distances again, tracking positions, noting how the space had changed since the moment they entered, how the balance had tilted in ways they could not see. "This is not your place," she said finally, her voice calm, even, carrying no raised edge, only quiet certainty. And that certainty landed harder than anything louder could have, because it did not ask for agreement, it stated a fact. The leader took another step closer, but it was not the same step as before, not as confident, not as grounded, and Ava saw the difference immediately. The shift from control to reaction, from command to uncertainty. Behind him, one of the men exhaled sharply, a sound too quick, too tight, and another glanced again toward the open door, where the darkness outside seemed deeper now, heavier, as if the land itself was watching, waiting. Ava remained exactly where she was, her breathing steady, her shoulders relaxed, her eyes focused, not wide, not fearful, but precise, locked onto the moment as it unfolded. And in that stillness, in that quiet control, something began to break in them, not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, like a structure losing its balance piece by piece. The leader felt it, even if he did not understand it, and for a brief second, his expression faltered, the mask slipping just enough to reveal the question underneath, the doubt he had not expected to feel here, in this place, in front of this woman. Ava saw that too, and she did not move, did not push, did not escalate, because she did not need to. The shift had already begun, and all she had to do now was stand in it, steady and certain. As the moment continued to turn in a direction only she seemed to fully understand, the tension did not explode. It tightened, pulling every second longer than it should have, and Ava felt it settle into the room like pressure before a storm, not loud, not chaotic, just heavy, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. The leader took another step forward, but this time it was not about control. It was about proving something, to himself, to the others, to the silence that had begun to question him, and Ava saw it clearly. The shift from confidence to insistence, from command to reaction. "You are not in a position to tell anyone what to do," he said, his voice firmer now. But beneath it there was something else, something that did not belong, and Ava did not answer, not with words, not yet, because she understood that speaking too soon would only give him something to hold on to. Instead, she held her ground, her boots unmoving against the wood, her shoulders relaxed, her gaze steady, and that stillness began to feel louder than anything they had brought with them. Behind him, one of the men moved again, but slower this time, circling slightly, trying to reposition, trying to find a sense of advantage that no longer felt as clear as it had minutes ago, and another shifted his stance, glancing toward the windows. As if the darkness outside had suddenly become part of the equation, Ava noticed all of it, every small adjustment, every hesitation, every glance that lasted just a fraction too long, her mind mapping the room without effort, aligning space, distance, movement into something precise and controlled. The leader stepped closer still, now only a few feet away, close enough that the space between them felt charged. But Ava did not step back, did not flinch, did not give him the reaction he expected, and that absence began to wear on him in ways he could not name. "I asked you something," he said, sharper now, pushing against the silence, trying to break it. But the silence did not break, it held, and Ava let it, because it was doing the work for her, pulling them further out of rhythm, further out of certainty. Outside, the land stretched wide and empty under the night sky, miles of open ground with nothing to interrupt the horizon, and that vastness pressed inward, subtle but real, making the house feel smaller, more contained, more exposed. Ava drew a slow breath, the kind that did not show on the surface but settled deep, anchoring her exactly where she stood, and when she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried with it a weight that shifted the room again. "You are already out of position," she said, not as a warning, not as a threat, but as a simple observation. And the words landed in a way none of them expected, because they did not fully understand what she meant, but something in them recognized the truth of it anyway. One of the men turned his head quickly, scanning the room as if trying to see what he had missed, and another took a small step back without realizing it, instinct pulling him away from something he could not yet define. The leader's expression tightened, his certainty slipping further, replaced now by a growing awareness that this moment was no longer his to control, that whatever advantage he thought he had when he walked in had already shifted, quietly, completely. Ava remained exactly where she was, her presence steady, her focus unbroken, her understanding of the space, the timing, the people in front of her far deeper than anything they could see. And as the silence pressed in once more, heavier than before, it became clear that the tension in the room was no longer building toward what they had planned. It was moving toward something else entirely, something they had not prepared for, something Ava had already seen coming long before they stepped through her door. The words settled into the room like something heavy, not loud, not sudden, but impossible to ignore. And for a moment no one moved, not because they chose stillness, but because something inside them hesitated, something instinctive that could not yet explain itself. Ava did not shift her stance, did not raise her voice, did not take a step forward or back. She simply stood there, grounded, her presence filling the silence in a way that made everything else feel uncertain. Outside, the wind returned, softer now, brushing across the open land and slipping through the broken doorway, carrying with it the faint scent of dry grass and distant soil, a reminder of how isolated this place truly was, miles of nothing in every direction, a space where sound traveled differently, where movement carried weight, where mistakes lingered longer than expected. The leader let out a slow breath, his eyes narrowing as if trying to see past what stood in front of him, trying to solve something that did not fit the pattern he was used to, and Ava watched that process unfold without interruption, her gaze steady, her focus precise, reading him the way she read the land, through subtle shifts, through quiet tells that most people overlooked. Behind him, one of the men adjusted his footing again, but this time it was not about positioning. It was about distance, creating just a little more space between himself and the center of the room, and another turned his head toward the hallway, listening, as if expecting something that had not yet happened. Ava noticed all of it, each small decision, each unconscious adjustment, her mind aligning them into a clear picture of what this moment had become. The leader spoke again, but his voice did not carry the same force. It pressed forward, but without conviction. "You are trying to scare us," he said. And Ava heard the question hidden inside the statement. The need for reassurance, the search for control. She did not answer immediately. Instead, she let the silence respond first. Let it stretch and settle. Let it press against him until his own words felt less certain in the air. Her breathing remained slow, controlled, her shoulders loose, her posture unchanged. But inside, everything was precise. Every detail accounted for. Every angle understood. The room no longer a space of chaos, but a structure she had already organized in her mind. A faint sound carried from outside. Not loud, not clear, just enough to exist. And Ava recognized it instantly. The shift in the land. The subtle change in how the night moved. And it confirmed what she already knew. What she had been waiting for without appearing to wait at all. The leader hesitated, just for a second, and that was enough. Enough for the others to feel it. Enough for their confidence to loosen further. Enough for the balance to tilt completely away from where it had started. Ava finally spoke, her voice quiet, almost calm to the point of softness. But beneath it there was something unshakable, something that did not need to rise to be heard. "I am not trying to scare you," she said. And for a brief moment, no one breathed. No one moved. Because the words did not carry threat. They carried truth, and that truth settled deeper than anything else could have. The wind pressed gently against the doorway again, the curtain, shifting once more in the hallway, and Ava's eyes flicked toward it for just a fraction of a second before returning to the leader, her focus sharp, her understanding complete. And in that stillness, in that quiet control, it became clear that whatever this moment was turning into, she had already stepped ahead of it, already seen it unfold before it reached them. And now she was simply standing in the exact place it would arrive. The words did not echo. They settled, deep and final. And for a moment the room felt smaller, tighter, like the air itself had shifted direction, and Ava could see it happen in real time. The exact second when doubt turned into recognition, when instinct overpowered assumption, when the men in front of her stopped seeing just a woman standing alone and started sensing something they could not fully explain. The leader's eyes narrowed, but not with confidence this time, with calculation, with a slow realization forming behind them. And Ava held his gaze without blinking, without pushing, just letting him arrive at the truth on his own. Behind him, one of the men turned his head sharply toward the doorway as a faint, distant sound carried across the land. Not loud, not immediate, but unmistakable, something approaching from far off, something that did not belong to them. And Ava heard it too, not as a surprise, but as confirmation, as timing falling exactly where it should. Her breathing remained steady, her posture unchanged, but her presence shifted in a way that was almost invisible, like a line had been crossed that only she understood. The leader took a slow step back without realizing it, just a few inches, but enough to break the illusion he had been holding on to, enough for the others to notice. And once they did, the entire structure of their confidence began to unravel faster, each man adjusting, stepping, glancing, no longer moving as a unit, but as individuals reacting to something they could not control. Ava watched it all with quiet precision, her eyes moving once across the room, confirming positions, distances, angles, the way the space had changed, the way it now worked in her favor without her needing to touch anything. "What are you not telling us?" the leader asked, his voice lower now, stripped of the earlier bravado. And Ava let a second pass before answering, not because she needed time, but because he did, because realization took space, and she was giving it to him. Outside, the wind shifted again, carrying that distant sound closer, clearer, and this time one of the men cursed under his breath, stepping toward the doorway as if to see it for himself. And Ava knew that was the moment, the exact point where uncertainty turned into awareness. "You walked into a place you do not understand," she said quietly, her voice calm, grounded, but carrying a weight that landed deeper than anything louder could have. And the leader's expression changed again, Not to anger, not to confidence, but to something colder, something sharper, the look of someone who had just realized the situation was never what it seemed. His eyes flicked once toward the hallway, then toward the windows, then back to her, mapping the space the same way she had. But too late, far too late, because Ava had already done that the moment they stepped in. Her stillness was no longer just calm, it was control, absolute, and unspoken, the kind that did not need to announce itself to exist. Another sound carried through the night, closer now, unmistakable in its rhythm, and this time all of them heard it, all of them felt it, the shift outside mirroring the shift inside. And for the first time since they arrived, no one laughed, no one spoke, because something had changed in a way they could not undo. Ava remained where she was, her eyes steady, her breathing even, her understanding complete, and in that quiet, in that controlled stillness, it became undeniable that whatever they had come here expecting, whatever story they thought they were walking into, had already turned into something else entirely, something they were no longer in control of, something she had seen long before they ever realized it themselves. The sound outside did not rush in. It approached with steady intention, growing clearer with each passing second, and this time no one mistook it for the wind, no one dismissed it as distance, because it carried a rhythm that did not belong to the land, something structured, something organized, something coming closer whether they were ready or not. Ava did not turn toward it, did not shift her stance, because she did not need to. She had already accounted for it, already placed it within the structure of the moment long before the others even noticed it, and that difference now stood between them like an invisible wall. The leader's eyes flicked toward the doorway again, sharper. This time, and when he looked back at her, the question was no longer hidden. It was right there, clear and undeniable. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice lower, stripped of everything it had carried before, and Ava held his gaze, calm, unhurried, as if the answer did not require explanation. Behind him, one of the men took another step back, then another, the movement small but continuous, driven by instinct rather than decision, and another turned fully toward the door now, his earlier confidence replaced by a need to see, to understand what was approaching from beyond the dark. The room no longer felt like theirs, not even partially. The energy had shifted too far, too completely, and they could feel it even if they could not define it. Ava finally moved, but only slightly, just enough to straighten her shoulders, a small adjustment that carried more weight than any sudden action could have. And in that movement there was no urgency, no panic, only control, quiet and absolute. "I told you to leave," she said, her voice even, not raised, not forced, just placed into the air with certainty. And this time the words landed differently, not as resistance, but as truth they had ignored. Outside, the sound grew louder, closer now, distinct in its pattern, and one of the men muttered under his breath, the words unclear but the tone unmistakable, a realization forming too late to change anything. The leader glanced once more toward the windows, then back to Ava, and in that moment, he understood something he had not when he first stepped through the door, that this place, this situation, this woman in front of him, had never been what he assumed. His jaw tightened, not with anger, but with the weight of that realization, and for the first time, he did not step forward. He held where he was, as if unsure which direction would even lead him out. Ava's eyes remained steady, her focus unbroken, her presence filling the space with a quiet authority that did not need to announce itself, because it had already been proven in ways they were only now beginning to grasp. The wind brushed through the doorway again, softer this time, carrying the sound fully into the room, undeniable now, no longer distant, and every man heard it, every man felt it, the shift outside mirroring the shift inside. Ava did not smile, did not react. She simply stood there, exactly where she had been, grounded, certain, as if she had been waiting for this exact moment all along. And in that stillness, in that quiet control, it became clear that whatever happened next was no longer a question of if, but when, and she was already standing ahead of it. The sound arrived before the lights did, low and steady, rolling across the open land and settling around the house like a perimeter closing in. And this time no one questioned it, no one dismissed it, because it carried authority in a way that could not be mistaken. and Ava remained exactly where she was, her posture unchanged, her breathing even, her eyes steady as she watched the realization fully take hold. The leader's shoulders lowered slightly, not in surrender, but in understanding, the kind that came too late to change anything, and behind him the others had already begun to shift, stepping back, glancing toward the doorway, toward the windows, toward anything that might offer a way out that no longer felt simple. The open land outside, once just empty space, now felt like distance they could not cross fast enough, miles stretching in every direction with nowhere to disappear, nowhere to regain control. Ava did not move to block them, did not raise her voice, did not change her stance, because she did not need to. The moment had already turned, completely and quietly, exactly the way she had seen it from the beginning. "You should have listened," she said, her voice calm, not harsh, not triumphant, just steady, carrying the weight of something final. And the words landed without resistance, because there was nothing left to argue against. The leader looked at her one last time, really looked this time, not at what he assumed, but at what stood in front of him, and whatever he saw there made him hold that gaze a second longer than before, as if trying to understand how he had missed it, how he had walked into something he never fully read. Outside, the sound grew clearer, closer, surrounding, rather than approaching, and one of the men exhaled sharply, the tension breaking in his chest as reality settled in. Ava's eyes did not follow them as they began to step back, as their movements turned from controlled to uncertain. She simply watched the space itself return to what it had always been, her home, her ground, her control. The wind moved through the doorway once more, softer now, carrying away the last traces of their presence as the room slowly emptied of their noise, leaving behind only the quiet she had known long before they arrived. Ava finally shifted, just slightly, turning her head toward the open land beyond the porch, her gaze settling on the horizon where the first hint of dawn began to touch the sky, faint and distant but certain, and in that light, everything felt still again, not empty, not broken, just resolved. She took a slow breath, steady and controlled, the same rhythm she had never lost, and without another word, without looking back, she stepped forward onto the porch, the wood creaking softly beneath her boots, the air cool against her skin, and behind her, the house stood silent once more, as if nothing had ever disturbed it at all, as if the night had simply passed through and left without a trace.